Have you ever wondered what music truly is? The teacher asked, his eyes glinting with curiosity as he looked around the room. The students, caught off guard, exchanged glances. One of them raised a tentative hand. It's sound, right? Notes, melodies, harmonies. The teacher smiled, but there was something mischievous in his expression. Is it really? He replied. Is music simply a collection of sounds arranged in a way that pleases the ear? Or could it be more? Could it be everything around us? The rustling of leaves, the hum of the wind, even the silence between words. The room went quiet, the students intrigued but unsure where this was going. The teacher walked to the front of the room, his hands gesturing to the open window where faint street sounds drifted in. You see, there was a man named John Cage who believed that music wasn't just confined to instruments or orchestras. He believed that sound, in all its forms, and even silence, could be music if you allowed yourself to hear it that way. He paused, letting the students absorb the idea. Cage didn't just create music, he transformed the way we listen to the world. His works, influenced by Zen Buddhism and the idea of randomness, changed everything. Today, we're going to dive into his life and philosophy, and by the end of it, I promise you'll never hear music, or silence, the same way again. The students leaned in, captivated. The teacher had piqued their curiosity, and the lesson was about to begin. 1. The life and legacy of John Cage. Imagine sitting in a concert hall, expecting to hear something amazing. After all, you're about to witness a piece by the legendary John Cage. The performer sits at the piano, and everyone waits with bated breath. But instead of music, you're met with silence. What's happening? For minutes and 33 seconds of pure silence stretch out, and suddenly, you hear everything else. The rustling of the audience, the hum of the ventilation, the distant sounds of the outside world. You realize, this is the music. John Cage had just transformed your understanding of sound and music itself. John Cage, born John Milton Cage Jr. in 1912, wasn't just a composer. He was a revolutionary thinker, an artist, a philosopher, and a creative visionary who reshaped the very concept of music. Throughout his life, Cage sought to break away from the confines of traditional Western classical music, striving to make us all more aware of the world around us. He made us question, what is music? What is sound? Does it have to be controlled, predictable, and orderly, or can it be something more organic, more random? But where did all this come from? Why was Cage so different? The answer lies in the philosophies that influenced him, particularly Zen Buddhism. Can you imagine how profound an impact Zen's ideas of mindfulness, non-attachment, and acceptance of impermanence had on a man who was already predisposed to breaking boundaries? The philosophical tenets of Zen Buddhism transformed Cage's life. His music and his art in ways that are still felt today. In this journey through Cage's life, we'll dig deep into the ways Zen Buddhism shaped his work. We'll explore his most famous pieces, like 4 feet 33 inches and Music of Changes, and analyze how he used silence, randomness, and the notion of chance in his compositions. But beyond that, we'll also look at how Cage's deep philosophical approach influenced not only the art world but also the way we think about life itself. By embracing unpredictability, randomness, and mindfulness, Cage didn't just change music, he changed the way we experience the world, too. The early life of John Cage, a foundation for nonconformity. Before we dive into the transformative power of Zen in Cage's work, we must first look at where he came from. How did a young boy from Los Angeles, born in 1912, become one of the most influential artists of the 20th century? Cage grew up in a household that valued creativity and invention. His father, John Milton Cage Sr., was an inventor, and his mother, Lucretia Harvey, worked as a journalist. Can you imagine the dinner conversations they must have had? Science, creativity, breaking boundaries, it was all in the air. In such an environment, it's no wonder that Cage was encouraged to think outside the box from a young age. But even though his household was rich in creativity, Cage's early musical education was rooted in the traditional. He studied classical composition and absorbed the teachings of famous composers like Arnold Schoenberg, who introduced him to the 12-tone technique. Schoenberg's method sought to avoid tonal centers by treating all 12 notes of the chromatic scale as equally important, a bold idea, but still grounded in structure. Cage, however, quickly realized that even this avant-garde method wasn't enough for him. Can you imagine feeling constrained even in the world of Schoenberg's radical innovations? Cage wanted something more, something that didn't just challenge the status quo but completely redefined it. During the 1930s and 1940s, Cage began experimenting with sounds in ways that no one else was at the time. He used prepared pianos, inserting objects like screws, bolts, and rubber between the strings to alter the instrument's sound. This innovation alone speaks volumes about his creative mind. It was clear early on, Cage wasn't interested in adhering to the established rules of music. He wanted to rewrite them, but Cage's true artistic revolution began after he encountered the world of Zen Buddhism. This is where things get really exciting, because Zen didn't just inspire Cage, it became the framework for his entire creative philosophy. 3. Zen Buddhism, the philosophy that shaped John Cage's world. Now, let's pause for a moment and imagine this. You're a composer who's growing increasingly dissatisfied with the constraints of traditional music. You've spent years studying, pushing boundaries, and experimenting with sound. But something is still missing. Then you discover Zen Buddhism, and suddenly, the world makes sense in a whole new way. That's exactly what happened to Cage in the late 1940s when he began reading the works of D.T. Suzuki, a Japanese scholar who introduced Zen teachings to the Western world. Zen Buddhism emphasizes mindfulness, non-attachment, and the dissolution of the ego. For Cage, these ideas were like a lightning bolt to his creative mind. Zen teaches that all distinctions, between self and other, between sound and silence, are illusory. Doesn't that just blow your mind? Cage took this concept and applied it to music. He began to see music not as something imposed by a composer but as an experience that unfolds naturally. Encompassing all sounds, intentional or not, in Zen, there is a practice called mushin, or no mind, where you empty your thoughts and judgments to fully experience the present moment. For Cage, this was a perfect metaphor for his own artistic ambitions. Can you imagine composing music that doesn't rely on intention or ego? Cage's goal became to create music that existed in the moment, free from the constraints of premeditated structure. Cage's Zen-inspired philosophy also aligned perfectly with the concept of non-duality, the idea that there are no fixed boundaries between things. In music, this meant that Cage didn't see a divide between sound and silence. In fact, silence became one of the most important elements in his compositions. Which brings us to one of his most groundbreaking works, 4 feet 33 inches, for silence in Zen and in Cage's compositions. The genius of 4 feet 33 inches. 4 feet 33 inches is probably the piece that most people associate with John Cage. If you've ever heard of this piece before, you might think, wait, isn't that the silent one? Well, yes, it is. But it's so much more than just silence. Let's break it down. In 1952, Cage premiered 4 feet 33 inches, a composition that consists of 3 movements during which the performer does not play their instrument. That's right, 3 movements of pure, intentional silence. But here's the thing, for Cage, silence wasn't the absence of sound. Instead, it was an opportunity for the audience to listen. And what were they listening to? The sounds of the world around them, footsteps, whispers, the breeze, distant car horns, whatever happened to be occurring in that moment. Cage was saying, all sound is music if you listen to it. Imagine sitting in that concert hall, initially confused or even frustrated by the silence, only to realize that Cage had opened your ears to something deeper. You become aware of every little sound you would have normally ignored. Suddenly, the world feels alive with possibilities. It's almost as if Cage was offering the audience a Zen meditation in the form of a concert. He was teaching them the art of mindfulness, encouraging them to embrace every sound without judgment. This idea of silence as a form of music was directly inspired by Cage's understanding of Zen practice. In Zen meditation, silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's a space for awareness, for listening to the world as it is without trying to change or control it. In the same way, 4 feet 33 inches asks listeners to be present with the sounds around them, without imposing any expectations of what music should be. Can you believe how revolutionary that is? In a world where music was expected to be structured, harmonious, and intentional, Cage's 4 feet 33 inches invited us to let go of all those expectations and simply be with the sounds of the world. It's almost like he was saying, there is no such thing as silence, only sound you're not paying attention to yet. 5. Chance operations, letting go of control, but Cage didn't stop at silence. He went even further in his exploration of Zen-inspired concepts, particularly the idea of non-attachment. In Zen, non-attachment means letting go of desires and expectations. Can you imagine applying that to art, where traditionally the artist is expected to control and dictate every aspect of their work? For Cage, non-attachment meant letting go of control over the composition process itself. He wanted to remove his own ego from his work, allowing music to emerge naturally without his interference. How do you even do that? For Cage, the answer was found in chance operations. Cage began using the I Ching, an ancient Chinese divination text, to introduce randomness into his music. He would consult the I Ching and flip coins to make decisions about his compositions. Everything from the pitch and duration of notes to the overall structure of the piece was determined by chance. Can you imagine relinquishing that much control over your art? It's like letting the universe compose the music for you. In works like Music of Changes, 1951, Cage used the I Ching to generate random decisions throughout the piece. The result is a composition that is completely unpredictable, an embodiment of the chaos and randomness of life itself. But Cage didn't see this as chaotic in a negative sense. Instead, he embraced it as a form of freedom. By letting go of his own intentions, Cage allowed the music to take on a life of its own, free from the constraints of his ego or desires. 6. Time in Zen and Cage's music, the present moment as music. Let's take a step back and think about time for a moment. In Zen philosophy, time isn't something that's linear or goal-oriented. Instead, the present moment is all that truly exists. The past is gone, the future hasn't arrived yet, so the only reality is the now. Zen practitioners cultivate mindfulness to stay fully present in each moment, free from distractions and attachments. And guess what? This approach to time became a core element of Cage's music as well. In Western classical music, compositions often have a clear beginning, middle, and end. There's a sense of movement toward a climax or resolution. But Cage wasn't interested in this kind of linear progression. Instead, he wanted his music to reflect the timelessness of the present moment. In many of his later works, Cage used long durations of sound and silence to challenge the listener's perception of time. Imagine listening to a piece of music where there's no clear direction, no sense of moving toward a goal. You're simply there, experiencing each sound as it comes and goes, with no expectation of what's coming next. Isn't that such a meditative experience? Cage's music often invites the listener to slow down, to stop rushing toward the next moment, and to fully inhabit the present. In pieces like Cheap Imitation, 1969, and Empty Words, 1973 to 1974, Cage used extended periods of silence or repetitive patterns to create a sense of timelessness. These works don't follow traditional musical structures, they don't have a clear narrative or resolution. Instead, they ask the listener to become mindful of each sound as it arises and passes away. Much like the practice of Zen meditation, Cage's exploration of time in his music reflects his deep engagement with Zen philosophy. Just as a Zen practitioner learns to let go of thoughts and attachments during meditation, Cage asked his listeners to let go of their expectations and simply be with the sound. Can you imagine how freeing that must feel? To let go of the need for music to mean something or to follow a certain path, and instead just experience it in the moment. 7. Visual art and Zen aesthetics. Cage's work beyond music. While Cage is best known for his music, his artistic explorations extended beyond sound. He was also a visual artist, and his approach to visual art was just as deeply influenced by Zen philosophy as his music was. Much like his musical compositions, Cage's visual art embraced chance, randomness, and the beauty of imperfection. Cage's visual art often involved the use of random processes, just as his music did. He would allow natural elements like stones, leaves, and sticks to dictate the composition of his drawings and prints. One of his most famous series, Ryoanji, 1983–1992, was inspired by the Zen rock garden at the Ryoanji Temple in Kyoto, Japan. In this series, Cage used stones to create abstract patterns on paper, tracing around them to form shapes. The placement of the stones was determined by chance, allowing the artwork to emerge naturally, without Cage's interference. Isn't that such a beautiful concept? Cage was allowing nature to be the artist, just as he allowed randomness to guide his musical compositions. This approach mirrors the Zen aesthetic of wabi-sabi, which values impermanence, imperfection, and the transient beauty of the natural world. Cage wasn't interested in creating perfect works of art. Instead, he celebrated the unpredictability and impermanence of life itself. Just as Cage's music challenges our perceptions of sound and silence, his visual art challenges our perceptions of form and composition. His work asks us to see beauty in randomness, to appreciate the patterns that emerge naturally from the world around us. Isn't it amazing how Cage applied the same Zen-inspired principles to both his music and his visual art? In both cases, he was inviting us to let go of our preconceptions and experience the world with fresh eyes and ears. 8. The influence of John Cage on contemporary art and music. Now, let's talk about Cage's influence. His embrace of Zen philosophy and his use of chance operations had a profound impact on both the music and art worlds. Cage's ideas about randomness, silence, and the role of the artist as a facilitator rather than a creator challenged the very foundations of art. Inspiring generations of composers, artists, and thinkers, in music, Cage's exploration of silence and chance operations paved the way for experimental and avant-garde movements. Minimalist composers like Steve Reich and Philip Glass were deeply influenced by Cage's approach to duration, repetition, and the use of non-traditional sound sources. Imagine how different their music would be without Cage's radical ideas about what music could be. Cage's influence extended beyond music into the visual arts as well. His collaborations with choreographer Merce Cunningham, as well as his connections to artists like Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns, helped blur the lines between music, dance, and visual art. Cage's interdisciplinary approach to creativity, rooted in Zen's holistic view of reality, continues to inspire artists across multiple fields today. In fact, Cage's impact can still be felt in contemporary art and music. His commitment to expanding the possibilities of sound and his belief in the inherent beauty of chance have inspired countless artists to push the boundaries of their own creativity. Isn't it incredible how one person's artistic journey can have such a lasting influence on the way we think about art and life itself? 9. Conclusion: John Cage wasn't just a composer, he was a philosopher, a visionary, and a revolutionary thinker who used art to explore the deepest questions of existence. His encounter with Zen Buddhism transformed his approach to music, leading him to embrace silence, chance, and non-attachment as core elements of his creative process. Cage's work challenges us to question our assumptions about art, music, and life. His embrace of randomness and his rejection of traditional structures open up new possibilities for how we experience the world. Through his music, Cage invites us to listen more closely, to appreciate the sounds we often overlook, and to find beauty in the unexpected. Isn't that such a profound message? Cage's work continues to resonate with those who seek to break free from the limitations of tradition and to experience the world with fresh eyes and ears. His legacy is not just that of a composer, but of a guide for anyone who wants to live more fully, more mindfully, and more creatively in the present moment. and the next time you hear the world around you, whether it's the sound of the wind, the rustling of leaves, or the distant hum of traffic, remember, John Cage taught us that all of it is music, if only we take the time to listen. As the lesson drew to a close, the teacher paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the quiet room. He glanced out the window again, the faint sounds of life outside barely audible now that everyone was so still. "Do you hear that?" he asked softly, almost in a whisper. The students listened intently, but no one responded. The teacher smiled. "Exactly. It's not silence, is it? There's always something, air moving, footsteps in the distance, your own breath." John Cage wanted us to hear this, to understand that music is happening all around us, constantly. All we have to do is listen. One student, who had been quiet the entire lesson, raised their hand. But why did Cage focus so much on silence? Doesn't it take away from the music? The teacher's smile grew wider, and there was a gentle warmth in his eyes. That's the beauty of it, isn't it? Cage showed us that silence isn't empty at all. It's full of possibility. It invites us to experience the world in a new way, to see the value in everything, not just the sounds we expect or find beautiful. He wanted us to let go of control, to embrace randomness, and to trust that there is something magical in even the most unexpected moments. The room remained quiet, but this time, it wasn't the silence of uncertainty. It was the silence of realization, of understanding. The teacher looked at his students, sensing the shift in their awareness. "You see," he said softly. John Cage didn't just teach us about music. He taught us about life. He showed us how to be present, how to find beauty in everything, and how to let go of our need to control everything around us. The world is full of music, and sometimes, we just need to stop and listen. He glanced around the room one more time, his voice now barely above a whisper. So the next time you walk down the street, sit in a crowded room, or find yourself in a moment of silence, remember, you're always surrounded by music. You just have to listen for it. With that, the teacher stepped back from the front of the room. The students, deep in thought, sat in perfect stillness, hearing the world anew.